All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Coding with Callie meetup. Mindy is our guest speaker today. Mindy, whenever you are ready, go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Callie. Let me just get this sort of situated over here. One second.
You're good. Do you have a preference for questions during or after your presentation?
Probably after. I have a fair bit of content to get through, so I think it would be helpful if we wait just a smidge. But I mean, if anybody does have one that's like super pressing, I'm not gonna turn it down. Is
Sounds
that
good.
okay? And hopefully you can see, oops, don't look, that's too early. Can you see capturing curiosity? Excellent. All righty. Well, I hope you all are as excited as I am to be here. I was just mentioning to Callie earlier before some of you arrived that I've been doing a ton of research on this. I'm really excited. It's something that I am working on myself. So I hope at the very least it can benefit all of you. So, all righty, here we go. So let's take a quick glance about what we are going to talk about today. So we're going to have a brief introduction about me and, my story. We're talking a little bit about what curiosity is, some of the benefits and challenges, 4 core concepts, which is what I really want you to take away from today. And then we will also try to do some reps and flex, which we'll cover in a little bit. And then we will wrap up and see what questions you have. So in my own quest through life, I have recently noticed an atrophy in my curiosity muscles. So I'm not sure when it happened, but I seem to have lost my childlike wonder. When did I become so focused on outcomes that I stopped thinking creatively or like outside the box? And honestly, when did life become less fun? Is something that I ask myself more than I'd like. So, sure, I'd love to know the answers to these questions, and I'm sure they exist. And I could certainly ponder them further, make some guesses, make some assumptions. But regardless of the answers, curiosity, just like physical muscles, have to be exercised. And I think that is where I have fallen victim. So let's be clear. I am not an expert on curiosity, and I'm sure as heck not perfect. But that said, this is a particular type of exercise that I have been seeking for a while, as I've mentioned. And selfishly, I have done a lot of research to reprogram my brain and to retrain my actions. And I've tried to simplify and distill a lot of the approaches that I have found along the way to make it easier on myself, at least, to practice curiosity. So what I'd like to do is share these approaches in a way that anyone else who may be feeling something similar can apply these tools to their own lives, their own workplaces and teams, and their own projects and careers. Because couldn't we all benefit from curiosity and creativity, even just a pinch? I've always thought of myself as a lifelong learner, a forever student, and I like to seek out new information. I feel as though I used to do this with ease, and it wasn't always done with pointed intention. So my sister and I were pushed to be the first generation in our family to go to college, and as a lifelong learner, I happily complied. But looking back, I was interested in a variety of topics, and I wasn't curious enough from the start to like really consider my prospects. So along the way, I have taken an ambiguous career path. I took opportunities that presented themselves to me when they arose. I didn't ask a ton of questions, but I always found a way to apply my natural curiosity to do well. So I started out in nonprofits where I navigated ways to be resourceful, to create meaningful programs, and I operated a small but a cornerstone branch in a rural facility with a teeny tiny budget. And the events of my life around that time quickly left me wanting more. My partner and I packed up and moved across the country, where I later found myself working in real estate, because frankly, it was all I could find at the time. I was a real estate assistant, and I found a lot of ways to enjoy what otherwise felt pretty meaningless. It was a role I didn't necessarily enjoy, so I was frequently networking with others and seeking a community in my new location while I continued that resourcefulness I had built up while I was in the nonprofit sphere. So along the way, though, I found technology and I knew I had to be there. I could feel the joy spread as I solved problems and built tangible things. And I was motivated to learn more on my own, and I researched options to try to cultivate those skills. So for the first time, I was also actively seeking a career opportunity that aligned with my goal, and I was able to transition to a SaaS company while I planted the seed that I needed to grow into my tech career. And you can read all about that in another post if you'd like. We'll end there because it is hard to navigate a new career where a solid foundation is essential and it takes time to ingest all of the stuff you need to know. And I'm here to tell you that life does not stop throwing curveballs while you buckle down to make a major career move in your career. And I will be honest, it's been difficult, but I won't stop now, and I hope you don't either. So we find ourselves here to rediscover that childlike wonder and find the tools to reach outside the box and identify tactics to take back some of that fun and spread the joy that I felt whenever I found technology, wherever we may need it most. So, what is it? Curiosity is a lot more than just a simple desire to know more about a topic or a concept or a question. It is a fundamental aspect of our cognition and the human experience. And I mean, think about it. We usually do it naturally as children. We tend to seek a sweet spot between understimulation, which might be like menial tasks, situations that lack novelty or complexity, and overstimulation, where we might be facing conflict, fear, overwhelm, uncertainty. Curiosity is ultimately an impulse to explore, a spark for finding that novelty, and a drive to discover without necessarily having an end goal. It's a thirst for knowledge that guides each of our unique ways to interact with the world as a mindset. I could probably spout out a ton of different benefits, but a well-developed sense of curiosity definitely builds meaningful connections with others. You usually get to know more about them. It breeds more creativity, more variety, and in the possible solutions that you might come across to solve a problem. When it's demonstrated by leaders, people tend to like those leaders more and think that they are also more competent. And it also builds stronger mental pathways to form stronger memories. So, I mean, if you're interested in a topic and you really dive deep, you're going to remember it more than if you're just, think about school days, studying for a test. Who cares? It's gone. It also builds trust and it can really expand empathy. So on the flip side, I have to admit that once we lose that practice with our curiosity muscles, it can be really hard to get it back and flex. So I'm sure you may have encountered some of the challenges we're going to talk about in a moment at some point or another. They are not unique to building or rebuilding your curiosity foundation. One challenge that I have found particularly difficult is discipline. Often when I think of curiosity, I think about leaning into impulse and embracing change. And of course, that's playing a part in all of this, which we'll get to. But like most things, it takes dedicated practice to become good at it. You can't find yourself in full complacency mode all the time. That's where that sweet spot was. It feels comfortable, but like with most things, there is a balancing act. And that's where you, like when you're in understimulation and overstimulation is where your curiosity is really peaked. When you're in the comfort zone, you may lose touch with your curiosity because, why? I mean, not to say that there isn't a place for having curiosity in that sweet spot, but it's definitely easier to access when you're in under or overstimulation mode. For many of you, some, if not all of the tools that we'll talk about might not come naturally, or some of the aspects will be easier than others, and some may stick, some may become a habit, some may not. But in any case, it will take disciplined practice, which I know doesn't sound appealing, but it's worth it. Another challenge that seeps into a lot of experiences is fear. Fear comes in many forms, but when it comes to curiosity, it's typically a fear of judgment from others that tends to come forth. For ages, we have naturally fallen in line with the expectations of our tribes because it has meant survival, safety, and community. Often, companies and teams express a value of this trait, but almost as often, leaders fail to relinquish their fears that embracing curiosity will lead to less efficiency and higher costs. Of course, there's always a risk to like leaning into curiosity because you just don't know what you're going to find. But ultimately, this value trait is an expression of value in name only because they fear failure. To fully grasp curiosity and to be able to reach outside the box and plant those seeds, it requires some level of challenging the status quo. Keep in mind that you don't have to necessarily act on anything, and you don't necessarily have to do anything that you don't feel comfortable with. But even asking questions to yourself about something small, like, I wonder how greeting cards became a staple for birthdays and holidays, could lead you down a really interesting exercise and possibly bring some new insights into how you can apply, like, how it started to many other places. And finally, probably the biggest challenge of all is that of humility. Curiosity can be applied outwardly, of course, as you explore the world, but it is also extremely important to apply it inward. You can find out so much more about yourself if you utilize the tools toward yourself as a human being. But it's tough to ask yourself the really hard questions. So the best approach that I have found to try to take yourself and the emotion out of a scenario is to consider your actions as if you're in the third person. So try to consider the actual words that were said or the actual actions that were taken, rather than like trying to think about what was actually happening. You might be able to glean something new by doing that, and it's perfectly okay to admit when you don't know what's going on or you don't know something, and that's when you can lean into experts to help you. Don't be afraid to dig a little bit deeper than you're comfortable with at first, but also be willing to be gentle with yourself. You are allowed to struggle and recognize the struggle without being too hard on yourself. If you can take what you learn and apply it to apply those lessons moving forward, then it's worth the extra push. And you're just like everyone else in this Zoom room or in the world. You are still learning. So take your new understanding forward with you. The more you grow your curiosity, the more you will tend to open yourself up to other points of view, and humility will allow you to listen better and fully consider others more empathetically. Today, my goal is to have you walk away with actionable tools. Again, I've distilled and simplified those as much as I can. However, I believe the message will be more clear and beneficial to you by focusing on just a few. So these 4 core concepts are things that can make a pretty big impact on their own. So let's take a look. I've probably already overused the metaphor of curiosity as a muscle, but the comparison is so apt. So let's start the process by talking through some of the tactics we can use to build that strength. So the 4 core concepts are observe and investigate, embrace failure, ask the right questions, and seek new experiences. So what we'll do is kind of go into those in just a little bit of detail, look at a couple of examples, and then afterward, I have an activity that we can use to try to flex our muscle. So observe and investigate. The easiest option to try is to sit back, relax, and observe. For me, that is a lot easier said than done. I like to be on the move, and I personally have a hard time slowing down to take in the whole view. If you're like me, I recommend finding something that helps you take that step back. Maybe it's meditation, maybe it's gentle music, or maybe it's the exact opposite, if that's what helps you reach that state. Maybe it's a warm cup of coffee or tea just to sort of like, again, take that step back. For me, it's often cooking. I tend to be more calm and I tend to be able to actually think through things. Sometimes I mess up the recipe because of that, but neither here nor there. I'll consider a problem I'm facing. I'll spend some time thinking about, oh, this is something I've wanted to think about all day. From this state, you can observe various aspects about the world around you. But observation is a lot more than just a passive tactic. You can also harness it to become an investigator. So especially with the rise of AI and fake news and social media meant to drive comparison with each other, there's a lot going on. You should be willing to review and question everything, even if it's something that is supposedly well known in society. You can seek out unbiased news sources and practice discerning valid options. You can look at social media, articles, books, forums, blogs, newsletters, videos, courses, podcasts, and the like. But don't forget that you can also ask each other, your fellow investigators. Understanding beliefs and opinions from varied perspectives is also a very helpful source, keeping in mind that they are not sources of fact, but sources of experiences. All of that said, there are a lot of words out there, I know, and it's a good idea to avoid information overload. So once you find some sources that you feel like you can trust, you can really hone in on the subject rather than like the sources and focus on those, and then just occasionally check in on your sources to make sure that they are still valid. I actually recently heard a really interesting way to think about this is to treat your information ingestion like nutrition. So you want it to be varied, diverse, nutritious sources, and you should always keep portion control in mind. So kind of going back to that information overload. Next up is embracing failure. The second tactic is often difficult to practice for most people. It's hard to embrace failure when we're frequently told to avoid it in life, whether it was to get good grades in school or work really hard to get a promotion. You know, it sucks to fail, I get that. The good news is that you don't have to jump straight into failing, especially when the stakes are really high. I would recommend starting very, very small with and learn to embrace it whenever, like wherever you are in this journey of practice. I'm actually still at the very beginning of this practice, and like I'm starting with really small things that don't feel too dangerous necessarily or too risky. So to practice, you could try something new and fairly innocuous, like a new board game, or you could try a small coding challenge, or maybe if it's a language, maybe you're learning like Spanish or something, and you're hanging out with Duolingo. Even those are small challenges that are okay to fail. The consequences of failing are really minimal, and you really just need to take stock of how you feel afterward. Ask yourself what you can learn from this particular experience, and yeah, just take a moment to think about how you feel. For instance, during COVID, I picked up crochet, and of course, I want the end product to look really good because I'm putting in time and effort, but on more than one occasion, my work has come out funky. So what did I learn from these experiences? This is a picture of one of my octopus creatures that I made. Sometimes I need to use a tool to keep track of the stitches that I made, especially when I tried to make a shirt, which I don't have a picture of because I didn't get very far before I realized this lesson, but I need to restart work on that actually. So a couple of other lessons I learned were about this creature. When I was working on it, like you can see that it's a little bit rounded. I actually learned that I had to have my needle in a certain way to get that like particular rounded effect. I'm not sure if any of you crochet. So that was one thing that I learned. And actually, I learned how to apply that in places that I did want it. Like if I did it in a certain way, it would become more narrow as opposed to like more wide. So I learned something from that. And also when I was working on this octopus, the directions didn't really explain in great detail where to put the legs or how to put the legs in. So I definitely made a few squids. This one is a squid with 6 legs. But you know, I learned a lot along the way. This was probably one of the better squids that I have, so enjoy. My partner likes to keep it around the house, so I guess it turned out okay. But the point is, I had to work on it several times before I got it right, and I learned something new each time. I gained a new approach, and when you consider failure, you can always learn something new. It may or may not help you in the future, but you're expanding your toolbox for the next problem you encounter, the next project you work on, the next idea you want to approach. So there are definitely benefits. Ask yourself the right questions, which sounds a little forward, I guess, but it's an interesting concept because there is true value in the ability to question knowledge. Even some of the people that we consider the smartest, like scientists, are often wrong and have to iterate on what we know as a human species. And I mean, even explorers, you might consider Christopher Columbus, whose claim to fame you may know as an explorer who discovered the Americas, but he thought it was the East Indies. So he was wrong too. As we venture forth into the future, the more questions we ask, the more we grow our understanding of ourselves and others. And ultimately, as humans, we want to be understood. So some of the approaches you can use for asking the right questions to understand other people and yourself are first, taking a moment to ask yourself, what is your intention? Often we judge others by the actions that they take because we just can't know their internal intentions. With ourselves, however, we have the benefit of being able to ask ourselves and check in, what is my intention? It takes the ability to be honest with yourself, and hopefully, if you know what your intent is, you can then ask more pointed questions to get to the heart of what you really want to know, and consider rephrasing a question, which we'll get to shortly. On that note, be careful with why. There are many people who may be triggered by a why because it feels like you are questioning them or their authority or their approach. And honestly, they may not even know the answer to the question. So it can cause some really negative reactions, and you likely won't get the information that you seek, or it may not align with your intentions because, like, sure, it seemed like I just really wanted to know what was going on, but the way that it was asked sort of felt like an attack. So you may not get the information that you're actually looking for. Words matter. There are ways to rephrase your why to get the desired result and still actually find the why behind it. So maybe instead of, why are we doing X? Consider something like, what will improve if we do X? Or who might benefit when we finish doing X, especially in the concept of like working on a project at work. You have users that are affected by what you're doing. Maybe instead of why did you choose to do Y to a teammate, you could consider something like, what helped you make the final decision to do Y? Or how did you approach Y to figure this out? You might genuinely be curious. Instead of why am I going to work on the Z team, consider something like, how did you decide on team dynamics to your manager? Or which skills do you think I can bring to best help the Z team? Because maybe you're okay with it. You're just like, why am I here? Maybe I feel like I don't belong. So they can really help point you to the underlying reason if you ask the question in a different way. And as you work to try different methods of rephrasing, you can also ask a friend for help. So find a spotter to monitor your questions and check in to see if the phrasing and attitude align with your intention. You can ask a coworker, a partner, a friend, even your children and grandchildren if you have them. Just make sure it's someone that you trust and someone who can be honest with you so that you can actually learn, grow, and improve over time. Another powerful tool is to use pauses to your advantage. This can be challenging, it is for me, but ultimately it gives the responder actual time to think, and you will be less likely to lead them to answers that they may not have chosen otherwise. It encourages the responder to go further in their answer, and it also motivates you to truly listen to their unfiltered answer. Keep in mind that there is such a thing as too long of a pause, but I feel like that's a lot harder to do in my experience. In a similar vein, we can try to avoid disguised questions, which are essentially statements or feelings in the form of a question. So like, for instance, do you think so-and-so is taking advantage of the company when they take extra long lunches? They're leading questions and they won't help you find the real answers that you seek. Rather, your biases will taint the answer. Rapid follow-up questions can also cause this. So even if you start with like a really broad question, if you start like jamming follow-up questions in there, I'm super guilty of this all the time. But basically, you're doing the exact same thing just with multiple questions. So if your goal is to truly learn, check in with your intention, consider rephrasing and avoid those leading questions. You may have also heard at some point or another about open-ended and closed questions. A closed question is essentially like a yes or no answer, or has a direct answer like, what is your favorite color? Green, it's over. The answer's done. Open-ended questions seek deeper answers like, what did you do to celebrate your birthday last week? It essentially helps you learn more about someone or a subject. And ideally, we want to lean towards those open-ended questions so that we can really dig a little deeper. And closed questions do serve a purpose, but if you ask them too early in the process, you essentially allow the responder to decide how much the information they want to provide, and you essentially hand over the power to them, which might squander your chance to practice curiosity, especially if you don't have the opportunity to ask more than a couple of questions. Finally, on this topic, let's put a few things together and talk about the questioning funnel. So before starting, let's consider our intention. We're going to use this picture as sort of framing how we're going to go about this. So perhaps at the bottom of the tunnel, we'll start with our target, is what happened to this tree and why? Why is it cut down? So let's now start at the top of the tunnel, and we're going to go down this funnel. So usually when you converse with others, you want to start with those open-ended questions, and ideally they will share answers and will help you like get better follow-up questions. So there may be a little bit of back and forth. So we'll try this. I'm going to talk to myself, but we can pretend that we are talking to each other. So maybe you'll ask something like, was there something going on with this tree? And I would answer yes. It is an ash tree that had been affected by an emerald ash borer infestation, and it is what it is. How do you feel about that cut tree? Kind of probably sensing the disappointment. I am really sad about it. It was a really nice tree in our backyard. I mean, we have like little dinosaur statues. I don't know if you can see that. They're kind of fun. But I'm really sad we lost a tree. I really like nature in my backyard. So from here, we've learned a little bit. We can sort of narrow to find more probing questions and maybe some more reflective questions. So did you consider getting rid of the stump? Like why is there still a stump here? Well, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a few tiny twigs branching off of this tree that hadn't yet been affected. And my partner and I decided we would rather have some green rather than no green. So we left the stump with a little bit of like new growth that was starting so that we could see if we could recover some of it. It's probably unlikely, but we're going to try. I think I already asked how I'm feeling about the tree, but I guess maybe you could sense that there was a little bit of hope there for the future. Do you have any plans to replace the tree? Yeah, we actually have a little area like off to the right of this tree that is pretty open, and I think we're going to plant a new tree, but I'd still like to see if we could get some greenery here. As you continue to go down the funnel, getting closer to the target, you might ask some more closed questions to clarify that you understand properly. So you might ask a closed question like, when did this happen? Actually, this tree got cut down on Monday. So that's a little bit more pointed. Going back to the closed question, like the time is really the answer. And, I could give you more, but I'm going to cut there. So maybe now we'll do a little bit more of like a summarization. So what I'm hearing is that it's still a recent wound for you and you're not thrilled about losing the tree, but it sounds like you're still hopeful for the future, both for this tree and the new tree. Is that right? So I'm sure you've probably heard some of those restatement statements, and those are really helpful to just summarize what you heard, make sure that you clearly understood, and it might lead you back up the tunnel a little bit if you didn't hear it right, but it gives you a chance to confirm understanding. So hopefully you too will reach the target when you practice. Obviously, this is a grossly oversimplified example, but it's just to practice the idea. Over time, you can also apply these right questions inward, as I've mentioned earlier, Take time to learn from your mistakes, however big or small, and just start asking yourself some of these better questions to try to see if you can better understand what's going on. Being curious can manifest itself in the activity of asking questions, sure, but it can also be a position from which one approaches their life. So when we were small, almost every experience was new. Whether we wanted to or not, we were in exploration mode. There were a lot of firsts, and that slowly diminishes as we age. But don't worry, there are plenty of new experiences to be had. Um, if there's something that you've always wanted to do, what do you think is the best way to see if you like it? Try it. So it might be a class, it might be an activity, it might be coding with Callie. It might be traveling to a new location. Maybe it's trying out a new media like VR or something like that. Maybe it's joining a community or attending an event that you've never attended before. Not everyone's ready to just jump into a whole big adventure from the start. So even if you're not ready for one of those types of activities, you can even start with small changes to make big impacts. You can start by changing something minor in your daily routine, like taking a new path when you're walking a dog, try a new recipe or a new food, maybe you try out a new style. Each experience is an opportunity to open your mind to new perspectives. It can provide you with varied experiences to increase your creativity, and it expands empathy for others when you put yourself into a different view. Excuse me. So let's take that new path with the dog as an example. Maybe you go to a new to you neighborhood and you meet a new friendly face. Maybe you, as you're walking, see a community garden and that's something that you've wanted to get into. So now there's a new lead. Or maybe you run into a construction zone or an unsafe environment and now you have to overcome a challenge to navigate this. Even in those like really small challenges or things that you might encounter, you can learn a lot. So it's worth trying it. So let's take a moment to, it's not a new experience for me, but it's one of my favorites. About 10 years ago, maybe more, no, about 10 years ago, I visited Ireland and Scotland. And at one point, this is actually in Scotland, I wrote that wrong, but this is a dilapidated castle. Honestly, I have yet to find information on this castle, so this is a really great opportunity for curiosity here. So what are some things that I learned? When I did some research afterward, I investigated, and I think it's Slane's Castle, I'm pretty sure. Again, there wasn't a lot of like details on the topic. Actually, it was pretty abandoned. I don't even remember how we found it. It was a friend of mine and I. And I learned that like these old castles, I had been experiencing other castles around the UK at the time. And like they have some really fascinating designs and they were used for different purposes. So I kind of applied what I had been learning to this castle to sort of ask myself some questions. How did my creativity improve? Well, there was no tour guide and there's really no information on it. So I had to use my imagination to sort of think about what might have been going on here. For instance, like it's dilapidated. I don't know if you can tell it's a little small, sorry. Um, but essentially like there are walls and there are like stairs and there are some beams, but that's about it. Um, so I don't know, maybe they were hit by some kind of like a conflict. Maybe it became too expensive and everybody just left because nobody could afford to keep it up. Maybe, I mean, this was like, I think somewhere between 13 and 1600s. So maybe there was a plague of some kind and everybody, perished. I don't really know. How did my empathy expand? Let's just think about that last thing that I said. If it was the case that there was, some major illness that spread, can you just imagine what it would have felt like to be in that space? I mean, heavy, but it expanded my way of thinking to consider other people that may have lived here and may have experienced this castle in a way very different from the way that I was experiencing it. So hopefully that's helpful. It's a little experiment there. But now that we have a framework to use, let's do a few repetitions. As I mentioned earlier, it takes practice to build this skill, and just like with meditation, you likely won't be able to guide the flow of thoughts and sit relatively still when you first start working on it. As you practice meditation bit by bit, you begin to have a little more control over your thoughts, more capability to like take stock of your body and sense how you're feeling as you practice. We can do something very similar to meditation, except we're going to do the exact opposite. We'll take a few minutes to try something that I like to call reverse meditation. So instead of trying to sort of resist internal thought or maybe passively let them come and go and then return to the center as you might with meditation, we want to try to follow the thoughts as they arrive and see where they lead. So we will try to draw on our imagination. And if any of you struggle with imagination, we are going to draw from something that many people have experienced, at the very least in an image. So while we do this, try to practice some of the tactics we've talked about. So to reiterate, it's observe and investigate, embrace failure, ask the right questions, and seek new experiences. I'll give you a little bit of time to follow your thoughts as they arise and pipe in occasionally with like a little bit more of a prompt. So if you're open to closing your eyes, I welcome you to that. You certainly don't have to. But for now, we find ourselves on a beach. Maybe it's one that you've experienced. Maybe you are envisioning your perfect beach. Or if you've never been able to visit one, perhaps you're thinking about a movie or an image, or maybe one you've seen online. There might be sand. There might be a rocky shore. All beaches are welcome here. Take a few moments to observe your surroundings in this space. We can take a moment to investigate. Are you thinking about a particular location? Do you have a sense of why you may have thought about this location? Do you like being on the beach? Is there something that would make this imaginary or memory beach more fun? Are there any defining features here? Any interesting rock formations, maybe a lighthouse, a boathouse? Are there marine or flying mammals around? Animals, excuse me. Ask yourself any questions that arise for you and allow your mind to wander in this space. If your eyes are closed, we can open them now. You may notice that there's a picture of a strange beach on my board now. This is Aberdeen, Scotland. There was a cool little sandy beach with some rocks in there. And again, it's kind of small. I don't know if you can see it very well. There was a strange cart on the beach that I thought was neat. And then I don't know if you can see it in the background, but there's this fishing village that we went and explored, and it was fascinating. And then there was like a lighthouse, and it was actually really super cold. So this was the first beach that I envisioned, especially because I was thinking about this castle visit. And yeah, just think about your beach. But hopefully you were able to give that a shot. And if it was hard, please don't give yourself flack. Just like meditation, it may not come easily at first, but we can embrace failure and give it a shot here and there when you want to practice curiosity in a quick, easy way. You just need a simple prompt to get started and allow the questions to come and follow them wherever they go. And the best part about this type of exercise is that any of you can set aside a few minutes whenever you need it to try this. So, in everything we do, there's an opportunity to bring a curious mind. As you increase your muscle, you will likely start to rediscover that childlike sense of wonder you once had. In some of the most unexpected moments, I have found this to be true. And you should also now have a toolkit to help you branch outside of that box whenever you need it. And increasing the frequency of your curiosity practice should help you start to see new perspectives and consider new ideas so you can think of other solutions that you may not have otherwise. Use your discipline to maintain your practice once you feel you've got a handle on curiosity. Do your best not to let the fear of what others may think leak into your practice. You have a lot to bring to the table by embracing failure and asking questions when they're warranted. Consider the impact you could make. There have been a lot of small moments for me recently where I have realized that just asking some of these questions to myself, I'm shocked to find that there is no good reason why I'm doing something, or it's like old or inaccurate assumptions that I'm using to sort of like steer myself. So challenge everything, investigate and review your resources, give it a go, and try to ask yourself the really hard questions. Welcome the humility that might arise when you do, and I'm sure that you will learn more about yourself. You'll understand more about why you're taking the actions that you take, and you might even glean some insight into how you speak and how you're perceived by others along the way. But now that we have these tools, we can start to just have fun in more things we do. I am still a work in progress on this, but I have found that I genuinely enjoy life when I am able to take that step back, observe, and make the time to enjoy new experiences, however big or small. And I'm hopeful that today you can walk away with at least a small spark of inspiration so that you can spread that joy that I felt when I found technology and decided to bring my curiosity front and center, focus on what I wanted, and I hope you can apply it wherever you need it most. That's all. Thank you.
Mindy.
Yay! Go ahead, Jay.
Oh,
Go ahead.
well, very nice presentation, Mindy. I appreciate it. I have a question for you. Um, j- I I think you also creating your own startup. Can you tell me more about it?
Yeah, so actually a friend of mine brought me in on a project that he's been working on, but I am helping make a lot of the decisions. So I'm a founding engineer it's a company called Audition Cat. It is a CRM for acting professionals and performers. And essentially we are like building the MVP right now. We haven't deployed yet, but we're almost there. Yeah. So
Yay!
that's what I've worked on the side. It's a lot of fun. Sorry.
Very,
Oh, I
very
just said congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're
oh,
almost.
very cool. Are you you guys are, are you guys building any leads at this time?
As far, what do you mean by leads?
Leads mean like possible user, um,
Yes.
investors.
Yeah, so there is it's a team of four of us mostly with some other folks who help out. And one of the guys who's on the team is currently an actor, and he is actually going out into the field and like talking about it with his actor friends and performer friends and talking about it with like people in the industry just to try to like drum up support and excitement. So yeah, totally.
Oh, are you getting paid as a co-founder, or are you getting equities as?
We had this discussion. I mean, we're not making money right now, and they're putting all of their money into making it work. So right now, I am mostly just doing it for fun. I'm doing it to learn. I have genuinely learned a lot more. I mean, I kind of hate saying this, but I have learned so much just from my side project, this audition cat, than I have at my actual job. So I'm mostly doing it for that. But we did talk
Mm.
about like, if it blows up and somebody purchases it, then, equity, which is just bonus for me. But yeah.
Oh, uh, I just want to know how much time you spent per week on the startup.
Yeah, so since I have a 40-hour a week job, I, can't work on it a crazy amount. So I try to give myself at very minimum like 2 or 3 hours a week, but I try to shoot for about 5 because that seems to be a happy medium. Occasionally there'll be something that I'm really interested in solving, or like I have extra time. So anywhere from like 2 to 10 hours a week is about my go-to, but 5 is sort of my goal, if that answers your question.
Ah, I see, I see. Well, the reason I ask is because I'm also cooking up a startup.
Yeah.
We're currently building our MVP, and one of the major problem I have is co-founder engagement, meaning how much time your co-founder is willing to spend time on your startup. Um, well, it turns out giving them equity does not motivate them at all, unless they are very motivated and think it will work out, because everybody got to pay bills, right? So uh turn out well, why don't I start paying them? So as soon as I did that, the co-founder engagement went way up. So well, I guess that's the difference between startup and actually working as a software engineer. You had to invest in people.
Yeah.
Um, and I also met another. I also met another founder. She's um she's also building a SaaS app for pets. Um, but she already got funding. She already got investors. I asked her why. How did you do it? She said she went to an event, and dude, she went to a lot of different events, and there's a lot of rich people there, and then they all liked pets, and
Can't go
that's how
wrong.
she got funding. So I guess I agree with you. You should go out to more events um and go out of your comfort zone and social with people. And I guess a way like keeping the conversation open-ended is also a good way to start a conversation.
But yeah, because then if you find out, like if you're meeting with people who might be able to invest, whether it's time or money, if you find out more about them and like what they care about and yeah, things that are important to them, you have a better chance of connecting and finding the people who are willing to spend money or time and help your project. So yeah, getting to know other people is really big. And I'm really into networking, but honestly, acting is not my sphere. So I'm really glad that we have Ned who goes out and does a lot of that work. So, but he's out there all the time and schmoozing and finding people to talk to. And I guess the other piece of advice would be to talk about it often. Because I mean, even as an engineer, I just sort of talk about it like it's on my LinkedIn, which is I assume how you found that. And like people ask me about it all the time, and I talk about it whenever I'm at networking events. So to your point, yes, like having those open-ended conversations and getting to know other people can help make some really interesting connections. Yeah.
I totally agree. Like, uh, in order to build a successful startup, one member have to know how to sell. You gotta know how to social with people. And while you have like other engineer who are more introverted to focus on the technical side. So I definitely feel like being social and know how to sell and definitely will be a very great skill to have. That will I think it will distinguish you as a software engineer. Would you agree, Mindy?
I sure would. I mean, and I think another thing I would add to that is like as you build up your team, you can find the folks who are better at the things that you're not good at. And like maybe you find somebody who's excellent at selling and is also an engineer. And then they can sort of help fill in the gaps and help you build. Or maybe you find somebody who's just good at selling and that's all they do. So as you build up your team, I think it would be good to like consider their strengths and like mutually use them to your benefit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but starting out is I I guess is the most difficult. Because you don't get a whole lot of funding to hire people with specialized skills. But yeah, you do have a point, Mindy.
And I mean, finding people like me who are genuinely curious and interested in what's going on, I think will also help you. Granted, they're not everywhere. you might have to like look a little bit, but like I am in it for the education. I am in it to learn more. So that to your earlier point about motivating and like, I mean, sure, I think money might help me, but I just wanted to learn more. So
Oh, interesting.
it
So I guess I just need to find the right people that are motivated.
sounds
Jay, are you building it yourself too?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Because yeah, I feel like for me with coding with Callie, it was like Mindy said, it was like educational based. It was like, oh, I really want to know what like end to end building a website, like fully myself looks like, you know what I mean? And so like that motivated me way more than like whether users were going to use it or anything like that. So I feel
yeah.
like you could also like pick a feature or pick something that you're super excited to learn about and like kind of dive into. And I think that could get your MVP done more quickly, is to just like find the pieces of it that like are really exciting to you.
And it could draw in more
Yeah.
people because if you are talking about it and you are stoked,
Yeah.
other people will be drawn to that too. I mean, that's part of why I started is because my friend who asked me to join was also an actor and he went through a boot camp with me and he was like, I'm so excited to actually get this off the ground. And aside from like he actually had like stuff organized and like a plan, it was nice because his excitement is what got me excited. So that might help too, to Callie's point, like figure out what is like really exciting for you.
Mindy, I
Um,
want to hear more about kind of like your journey into tech. So you kind of mentioned boot camp, and then at the beginning you mentioned like you were already working for a company, and then kind of like, so yeah, I guess I'm just really intrigued. I want to know more.
Yeah, so I have been at the SaaS company that I mentioned for about 4 years now. So I started there like going into COVID, and it was just before COVID that I was like, technology, that's what I want. Which feels like it should have timed out nicely, but the world was in chaos and everybody was freaking out, and I needed to work. So I found a real estate software company. So right now I work for a real estate CRM. It's not a startup, but it's like a small company that has been growing rapidly. And so I started there in support. And that's how I got in. I'm decent at talking to people. I used to be in real estate, so I had a great way to build rapport with our customers. And like from the start, I made it very clear that I would like to do something more technical. At the
Okay.
time, I wasn't necessarily like, it has to be engineering, but I was like, I'm really drawn to how things work together. And so I like took up the mantle and like learned all about our third-party API vendors and like I became the go-to person for all of those. And eventually I found the boot camp and I was doing that nights and weekends because I had to work to support myself. And
Really.
I again was like super clear, this is what I'm doing at the end of it, this is where I want to be. Thankfully, it's a really small company, so I was able to like talk to our whole C-suite and they were very supportive of it. They actually tried to help me pay for it, but I didn't know that we were in the middle of an acquisition. So that
Um,
happened during my boot camp. And what else did I want to say about that? Oh, they also asked me to take on this other project in another role, and I really didn't want to do it. It was onboarding, it was talking to customers, it was leading a team, and I really wasn't into it. And I made that very clear, but they sort of not directly, but they were like, if you do this, it's more tech, like there is a technical project we want you to work on. And then hopefully at the end of it, we can help you transition. And lo and behold, as soon as I finished my boot camp, which I'm really grateful for, especially in the market the way it is right now, they helped me move over about a year and a half ago to engineering. So now that's where I am.
Amazing. And so when in all of this, because like to me, that sounds like a lot of curiosity and it sounds like that drove a lot. So like when did you feel that like you weren't being curious? Like where in the timeline is that and how did you know?
That's a great question that I am currently dealing with personally.
Okay.
I think if you remember, I said like life doesn't stop throwing you curveballs when you're doing all of this. So during my boot camp, so picture this, I'm working full time, nights and weekends. I'm working on boot camp stuff. I'm working on side projects. I'm learning all about JavaScript and like Node at front end, back end, all that good stuff. And We found out that my dog had cancer. I found out that my dad had cancer, and
Oh,
yeah, and I lost my stepfather, who was actually pretty important to me. So like
so
some
sorry.
major stuff was happening. Thank you. It's okay. I'm working through it. Um, but it was just a lot of big stuff happening all at the same time as some other big things that were happening. Um, so I think I lost it somewhere amongst all of that, which was approximately 2 years ago.
Feels
Um,
totally fair.
yeah.
You did,
Well, and
yeah.
like, I was talking about like I already have a hard time taking a step back. And that just made it so much harder because there was so much pressure on like, so with my dog having cancer, we decided to try to treat it and we fought it for 9 whole months. But
That's
that
stressful.
was a lot. Um, and then my dad thankfully is coming up on the other end of lung cancer and still have him and he's kicking and he's doing pretty good. So
Amazing.
like there's just a lot of stuff happening. And I think I just sort of it's easy to lose sight of like the fun stuff in life when things are just hard. So yeah, that was a great question. Thank you, Callie.
Well, I appreciate you explaining all of that because I think it's really important to kind of always like check in with yourself and like where you're at mentally and like know, is this a time where I need to just do less and just kind of like wallow, or is like this the time where like, no, I need to get out of that hole and I like it's time to start, finding the joy in life again. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share it with all of you. I appreciate it.
Well, this was such a great session. It kind of took me by surprise a little bit because it was like usually these are kind of like techy, but it was such a nice session. I loved the activity. I really appreciate you coming on. And I think this might have been like the most well-prepared presentation we've had so far. Like, did you have a speech? Because it was like perfect.
Because in seeking some of these new experiences, this is actually something that I wanted to like this presentation. As I mentioned, I've been doing a ton of research on this for myself. This presentation is something that I have wanted to share with people for a long time. And I think I mentioned to you already, Callie, but recently I submitted to do this talk live at a big conference.
It's gonna
So
go so good.
so next month I'm doing this same talk. I might tweak it a little bit. But I essentially prepared for that big talk with this. So thank you all for being my guinea pigs today and listening. And hopefully you find some value in it because I know we talked earlier, Callie, like there's definitely space for curiosity in the realm of tech because you're constantly learning. And if you aren't interested in the learning, then it's going to be much harder to do it. So finding that natural curiosity is really helpful.
I
Wait,
love it.
I actually have another question.
Yeah.
What if what if you are like the staff engineer or something and but you got a junior uh like come out here and then you have a question and you don't really know it like wouldn't it like make you uh make you feel dumb if you like staff engineer and it you don't know what a junior doesn't know.
I mean, I personally love to ask questions. I like asking dumb questions because honestly, I have found that like maybe there's an aspect that somebody knows more than I do. Like I think I read a news article or a newsletter article at some point that like somebody was like, "Oh, the junior engineer decided to be the go-to for this new technology." So then all of a sudden the junior was telling all the seniors and staff folks how to do it because they decided to hone in on that because they were really interested in it. So, I mean, personally, as long as you're with people that you know, like, and trust, I don't believe in dumb questions. I think they're great. Um, so I hope that answers your question, but like, I think that's perfect. I think that everybody knows something that everybody else doesn't know. Um,
Yes.
makes sense. So there's always room for that.
Sometimes when
Yeah.
you know less, the perspective that you bring to the situation can solve something. Like I posted this on LinkedIn, but just last week, I got a message from, I think it was like a senior staff engineer, and I were working on like a cross team project. And he's like, oh, we got this bug. This isn't working. Let's pull some engineers into the room. Like I was the most junior engineer in the room. And they're like, okay, we got to re-engineer this whole system to make this work. And you know what it was? Jay, it was a
What?
typo in the URL. Okay.
Oh, and who found out about it?
Well, I found it because I was
Oh,
like, I
nice.
don't know what's going on, guys. Can we just like, whoa, like let's look at step one. You know what I mean? Like walk me through each of the steps because it was like a distributed system of, things happening between each of these teams' applications. So I'm like, excuse my dumb question here, but like let's trace the request through everything and see. And it was a typo, right? But like here's all of these brilliant engineers in the room. And like I felt dumb that I didn't know and I needed them to explain it to me. But like that, me asking the dumb question is how we figured out it was a typo and we didn't have to sit there and re-engineer everything.
Wow, interesting.
Sometimes dumb questions are the answers, you know?
You would spend months re-engineering that whole thing.
Yeah. It was literally, they're like, okay, like we're gonna have to like spin up a test fleet and then like do that. And it was a typo. So
Nice find.
yeah.
Snaps.
I think it's not even like it was literally because I didn't understand and I just asked questions. So like Jay, I don't think you should be concerned about asking a dumb question or feel like if you know something that someone more senior than you doesn't know. Like none of us can know everything. You know what I
Mm,
mean? So like, and also we're all humans. Like staff engineers are not like the pinnacle of humanity, like
I
they just
actually like the folks that are more senior than me. I like them more, like they become more approachable whenever they ask me like I have a few folks that I work with and they have asked questions and I'm like, okay, cool. They like trust me to try to answer it even if I have no idea what it is as a, more junior person. So, yeah. I think it's valid and I think it should be encouraged.
ask those questions. And honestly, if somebody like is like, that was a dumb question, then they sound like a jerk,
Agreed.
Because staff engineers are put there to teach you. Like their whole purpose, not their whole purpose, but like a huge purpose is to like share knowledge across the company, and to not like gatekeep it. So, anywho, we're 2 minutes over and now I'm ranting and this isn't even my thing. So, thank you all for coming. Mindi, thank you again. Your talk is going to do great. And I will see you all next week for some live coding.
Thank you.
Bye,
yeah,
everyone.
appreciate it, Mindy.